Hi, I'm the Business Guy. Work on your strengths, not your weaknesses. Here's why it's more important to develop your strengths than improve on your weaknesses. Think of something that you want to improve about yourself. Go ahead. How would you categorize the thing you choose? Is it a strength or is it a weakness? In all likelihood, you'll choose a weakness. A study from a few years ago found that we tend to see weaknesses as more changeable than strengths, which means we're more inclined to try to improve where we're weak. But various studies have shown that when we focus on developing our strengths, we grow faster than when trying to improve our weaknesses. Plus, people who use their strengths are happier, less stressed, and more confident. I mean, think about it. What would you say is a weakness of Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Tom Brady when they were at their best? I can think of a lot. I would guess gymnastics, chess, computer programming, high diving, ballet, square dancing. So when Michael Jordan was playing basketball at peak performance and ballet was his weakness, why don't you think he spent hours working on his plie, his cabriolet, his releve? Because he was working on being the best basketball player he could be, not the best ballerina. He was strengthening his strengths, improving his jump shot, weaving through the defense, wearing his Nikes, not his ballet slippers. And you would improve this video by clicking the like button below so YouTube promotes it. Thanks so much. And if you would be so kind, you can also click the subscribe button below so that when more videos come out like this, you'll be up to date right away. And my goal is to have 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so please share this channel. So if you find that you're constantly failing or falling short of the goals that you've set for yourself, it may be time to consider trying to improve where you're already strong, rather than focusing your efforts on getting better in the areas where you're weak. When somebody says focus on your strengths, it's easy to read that as just do what you're good at and you don't need to improve. But that's what Stanford professor and researcher Carol Dweck calls a fixed mindset, believing that your talents are innate gifts. And that's opposed to Dweck's growth mindset, believing that your talents can be developed. Tiger Woods will spend all day at the tee box until his hands bleed, put band-aids on them, and then practice for another 4 hours. Tom Brady spent hours every day studying the videos of his opponents. Professor Dweck argues that both strengths and weaknesses can be improved, and she says the people with a growth mindset tend to achieve more than those with a fixed mindset because they put more energy into learning. In other words, people who believe they can improve put more effort into improving, which in turn helps them improve. So to grow professionally and personally, it's not enough to identify your strengths and use them. You also need to believe that those strengths can be improved. The first step in growing your strengths is to identify them, and that can be a tricky task. Now, weaknesses are obvious. You're asked to give a speech, but you feel miserable with anxiety anticipating it. Or you're asked to document a process, but you think you always did poorly in your writing classes in school. So that blank page just stares right back at you. Weaknesses often carry vivid memories of some past shortfall. Exercising your strengths, on the other hand, tends to feel more like moving through day-to-day life. They can make it hard for some people to identify what it is they're really good at. If you're not sure what your strengths are, here are some ways to identify them. First of all, pay attention. Now, pay attention may seem like generic advice, but we sometimes ignore signs of our strengths because we're so interested in improving our weaknesses. For example, in college, I wanted to be a physician. I got accepted to medical school, but the school went out of business before I attended my first lecture. I wanted to be a professional bodybuilder. I lifted weights 6 days a week, ate healthy, took all the supplements, but I didn't have the genetics for it. I was muscular, but when I entered the bodybuilding contest and stood up there on stage, I looked like a beanpole next to those monsters. Now, I did win one contest, but it was a small hick town in Oregon with just a handful of contestants. Now, I liked being on stage, so I started taking public speaking courses. I spent 8 years of my life making an incredible living as a professional public speaker. Life was telling me that I was much more talented with my mouth than my muscles. Now, here's another example. In a performance review, a former boss told me, you need to show an interest in people before you just jump in and try to sell them. You can sell, but you really need to show people that you care first. Sure, it was a criticism, but when I took a step back and thought about the conversation some more, I realized there was a strength buried in the criticism. I really do care about people. I really love to help people, but I have to show it by showing an interest in the things that are important to them first. And I went on from that point to win the World Sales Champion Award by selling more than anybody in that global organization. Sometimes you have to look at things a little bit deeper to find your strengths. Unexpected praise for something you didn't put put much effort into can be a sign. So could a compliment buried within a criticism. If people talk your ear off, you might be a good listener. If people consistently come to you for good advice, you might be a good leader or problem solver. Life has a way of showing you your strengths if you just pay attention. Think about how different activities make you feel. In his book, Go Put Your Strengths to Work, Marcus Buckingham says, we often identify our strengths and weaknesses in the wrong way. We think of strengths as things we're good at and weaknesses as things we're bad at. But a better way to think of strengths and weaknesses, Buckingham argues, is to figure out what energizes us. Strengths make us feel strong. Weaknesses make us feel weak. So he says, one way to identify your strengths is to think about how activities make you feel. Something is a strength if it makes you feel successful. You're drawn to it, even if you don't know why. It fully engages you. When doing it, you often find yourself in a flow state. After doing the activity, you feel energized, fulfilled, and powerful. In his book, Buckingham gives an example of a man who as a young boy showed incredible talent as a swimmer. His mom noticed the talent and got him on the swim team. He was on the swim team for many years and won lots of awards, but he hated it. So in high school, he quit the swim team and started pursuing something that energized him instead, making music. So it's definitely possible to be good at something you hate doing, but it's not the type of strength you necessarily want to improve. Instead, think of the things that energize and excite you, even if you don't excel at them yet. Those may be the strengths you set out to develop and grow. After all, Michael Jordan didn't even make the varsity team his sophomore year in high school. He needed to develop his talents, and he did. It may be hard to see your own strengths, but the people in your life probably see them quite clearly. Ask your friends, family members, boss, coworkers, or a mentor to tell you what they think your strengths are. Some people may be uncomfortable responding, and that's okay. Others may respond in a way that's unhelpful. My mom says I'm good at everything, and that's okay too. The goal is to identify things that you wouldn't have thought of on your own, or to find patterns. Then consider the responses. Do any of the strengths people reported make you feel excited and energized when you exercise them? If so, these may be the strengths you want to grow. Another option is to take a test designed specifically to identify strengths. Gallup's Clifton Strengths Test is a popular option that's used by both individuals and companies. You can take the test and see where you land on all 34 possible strengths the test measures, about $50. You can pay a little less, about $20, to uncover your top 5 strengths. For a free option, you can take the High 5 test. It asks 100 questions, each showing you a statement. You weigh in using a scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree as to how well the statement describes you. When you're finished, you get a brief report listing your top 5 strengths, each with a short description. Then if you want more information, you can download a comprehensive report, about $30, after you've completed the test. Finally, strength tests and personality tests share a lot of the same qualities. If you don't find what you're looking for after taking a strength test, consider the Myers-Briggs type of indicator, about $50. In addition to providing information about your personality, your results will tell you some jobs that are often compelling to people who share your personality type, which could help you brainstorm some possible strengths. In the Introvert's Complete Career Guide, Jane Finkel recommends an exercise where you think of your proudest accomplishments to identify your interests, skills, and values. But the exercise is also a way to identify your strengths. Think about all the accomplishments you're proud of. It could be something like getting a promotion, getting a book published, or even teaching yourself how to change an alternator in your car. Think about accomplishments that energized you. They don't necessarily have to be things you'd include on a resume, and try to narrow down your list to only 3. Then look at those accomplishments and try to determine what each says about you. For example, my favorite accomplishments are singing a song with my buddy in front of the class at school, getting my pilot license, buying my first computer in 1986 and teaching myself how to use it, getting my college degree and paying for it by working my tail off all summer was another. If you look at these things together, writing and performing and taking responsibility comes across as a theme. It's also a clear indicator that I like learning and that I'm dedicated to doing the work that's required to get what I want. Any of the insights you gather by looking at your proudest accomplishments side by side could be strengths, particularly if those strengths match up with what others told you your strengths were, or results of one of the tests that are recommended above. After you've identified your strengths, the next step is creating a plan for how you'll grow those strengths. If the strengths you found were things you haven't focused on before, but uncovered through the exercises above, your first steps may be as simple as starting to learn more about your newfound strengths. You can start with something simple, like taking a class or reading online tutorials, then move forward from there. It's more difficult to figure out how to grow your strengths when you've been actively using them for a while. You may feel like you're already proficient and there's no more room for growth, but there's always room for growth. Here are some ideas to consider. Think about constructive criticism you received. You can be really good at something without being an expert at every part of it. For example, constant feedback I received at Toastmasters is that I talk too fast, and I still haven't mastered the art of slowing down. Now, to improve my strengths, I spend time each day reading books and watching videos by and about successful people. I analyze their styles and techniques and try to work some of those concepts into my own business and my YouTube videos. And I'll never arrive. It's a fun game of constant improvement. If you can't think of where you need to improve on your own, then ask the people you work with for feedback. People are usually more open to providing constructive criticism when they know you're looking to find ways to improve. If you're truly an expert at what you do, another option is to develop related skills. For example, if you're an excellent blogger, you could turn your attention to learning related fields like SEO, videography, or graphic design. If you're a talented developer, you could learn project management to build your leadership skills. Learn something that will make you better at your core strength, even if that secondary skill never becomes a main area of focus for you. When developing complementary skills, it usually helps to consider your long-term goals. What skills will you need to get to the income level you want to have 5 years from now? One way to figure this out is to constantly read books and listen to audiobooks about things like sales, coding, or whatever profession you're in. See what skills the great ones have that you don't. You might even consider asking those people to talk with you about the skills they thought were most helpful in growing results. In Go Put Your Strengths to Work, Buckingham notes that only 17% of people say they spend most of their time at work playing to their strengths. While you may not be able to go to your boss and create your own role that's solely focused on your strengths, Buckingham suggests the following. Push the people at work toward your strengths and away from your weaknesses. Push for more training around your strengths. Push for inclusion on teams or projects that could really use your strengths. Push to spend time with colleagues who share one of your strengths and are even more adept at applying it than you are. At the beginning of each week, he says, think about ways you could use your strengths a little more than you did the previous week. By doing so, you can grow the percentage of time that you spend on your strengths at work gradually over time. After all, the more you use your strengths at work, the more people will recognize you for those strengths. And they may even start coming to you anytime there's a need for somebody with your unique skill set. There's a concept in teaching known as the protege effect. People learn the material better when they have to teach what they've learned to others. Several research studies have found out why. People who expect to explain what they have learned do a better job of organizing their knowledge and recalling it. Plus, as they teach, they identify knots and gaps in their own thinking. Consider hiring an intern or taking on a mentee. By walking somebody inexperienced through something that you know inside and out, you may uncover things you didn't know as well as you thought you did, things you could improve on, or new ways to do the things you thought you perfected long ago. In itself, focusing on developing your strengths can help you accomplish more. At Mindset Works, an organization focused on studying Dweck's growth mindset, researchers performed an experiment on students who were performing poorly at school. They split the students into two groups. One group learned about the stages of memory, while the other group was taught about the growth mindset. After the experiment, the students in the group that learned about the growth mindset were more motivated and put in more effort, and their grades improved. On the other hand, the grades of the students who learned about memory continued to decline. So if you've made it all the way to the end of this video, you've already taken your first step toward growth. Please click like, subscribe, and share this video. See you next time. This is The Business Guy.